Welcome to A Therapist, a Buddhist, and You, brought to you by the Recovery Collective in Annapolis, Maryland. At the Recovery Collective, we offer hope and support on your journey to healing and growth. I'm your co-host and therapist, Luke DeBoy, and I'm joined by my co-host, the ever-enlightening and always surprising Zaw Maw.
Hey, Luke.
Hey,
Hello,
Zaw.
everyone.
Cravings.
Yeah.
Cravings are something we all of us experience. And yes, that even includes the monk who has let go of all the personal belongings. I'm not lying. That's the truth. The second truth, if I'm not mistaken. It's a joke, right? Whether you're battling addiction or just curious about managing those irresistible urges, this episode's for you. We'll explore powerful strategies to help you navigate and overcome cravings. So stick around because you're about to hear something that really could be life-changing. Cravings, whether it's for substances, a behavior, or even certain foods, they can really be intense, overwhelming, and sometimes feel impossible to control. I can relate. Last night, Zaw, there's that Haagen-Dazs coconut pineapple ice cream that's summer and dairy. That was a craving. But what if I told you there are strategies to manage and overcome these cravings? There's techniques that not only help you recognize and understand them, but also reduce their power over you and offer practical steps to take when they become too strong to handle. So in today's episode, we're going to explore these strategies in depth. We'll uncover the secrets to effectively manage cravings, drawing from both therapeutic and Buddhist perspectives. Whether you're supporting someone who is, or you're simply interested in better understanding this human behavior and mental health, we're providing ways to gain control over these vicious impulses. So please remember to like and subscribe to our podcast and stay updated on future episodes. And if you find our discussion helpful, please share them with others who might benefit it. That's really our vision and mission here. Your support helps us continue bringing valuable content to you and others. And if you've been with us for multiple episodes and want to show your gratitude in the form of giving us a coffee or cash, please do so through the link in our episode notes. We'd be very happy, and if you want, we'll even give you a shout out. And don't forget, season 2 of our podcast will be wrapping up in July. So after this one, we've got one more episode in July. And we'll be taking a break in August to work on some exciting new e-courses that we know you'll find beneficial. We'll be back in September with season 3, packed with more insightful topics and discussions. So Zal, this week, it's the week. We get to introduce our brand new subscription to our listeners here on our other platforms. We call it The Collective. It's packed with valuable insights, practical tips, and exclusive updates designed to elevate your mental health and support your wellness and recovery. And it's something that we certainly talked about for a while, and we want to bring a lot of value, and everything in this subscription will be free. And it's really important to us to bring this to you guys. And our mission is to offer expert advice and actionable strategies that can genuinely help you, the people in your lives. We'll have a recurring segment in this subscription. You'll explore how to align your self-care practices with the natural cycles of life and enhance your well-being with practical, season-specific advice. One of the great practitioners at the Recovery Collective, Jennifer, she will guide you from winter's introspective calm to summer's vibrant energy, helping you nurture yourself through the changing seasons. So that'll be really cool, right? You'll also gain access to unique resources, the latest updates on our services, workshops, e-courses, short-term, long-term goals. We might have some ebooks or other books to offer, as well as other community events. Our engaging content includes Zaw with his Buddhist-inspired mindfulness exercises, and we'll offer other holistic therapy tips and inspiring real-life stories. Plus, if you sign up, you'll enjoy special offers and exclusive discounts available only to our subscribers. So click the link, it's in the episode notes, and you'll get an email from us, and we will not spam you to death, that's for sure. We'll make it valuable. So check us out. It'll be in the episode notes. You can also check our website out, and it'll be pretty readily available there. It will be worth your while. So, all right, so let's get into it.
Sounds good.
Cravings. It's time to us to go to the recovery and addiction topic. I want to talk about reducing cravings. They can happen at a bunch of different times on people's journeys, especially early on, and there can be trigger periods for people. But I like we've had in some of the other episodes that we've talked about, whether it's the physiological aspects of addiction, whether it's the perfect equation of recovery we've talked about, and this one's getting down to the nitty gritty that people struggle with, and that's cravings.
Yeah, where do we begin?
Well, we
I
all
can,
got them.
yeah,
Maybe for you and I, they're not necessarily drug and alcohol based like they used to be. I don't think I've had a full blown craving in years. I've certainly had fleeting thoughts. I think for the first 5, 6, 7, 8 years of my sobriety, as soon as spring went into summer and then I hit that like 83, 85-degree day, for some reason I thought about a beer, but it came in as fast as it came out, and it went out as fast as it came in. But cravings can and still happen for people, and it doesn't mean that I'm not susceptible to them, because I can be, right?
yeah, I like that framing of reducing craving, especially for somebody who's new. Getting rid of craving completely probably sounds impossible. I
Mm.
think it is impossible to be 0% completely gone, but I guess my understanding of craving, or maybe you can expand more on that too, of like, I need to have it, like the need, like a desperate desire that almost I'm going to die if I don't get it. I don't know if that sounds too extreme, but that's my understanding of what craving means.
I think for a percentage of our listeners that are in some form of recovery, like 12 steps, how can I get rid of something if I'm powerless over it? If I can't, I'm powerless over drugs and alcohol, and my life had become unmanageable. The step one you see so frequently. Well, I don't know if I'll ever get rid of it, but can I reduce it? Right. So let's break cravings down into three categories to help us cope and deal with them. And I call it the three R's. The first one is recognize, the second one reduce, and the third one is relocate. But let's break each one down. So the first R, I say recognize. You can self-diagnose. How many conditions or disorders can you self-diagnose yourself? So if we're having a craving, and if we identify it and acknowledge it, if all of a sudden that first 83, 84-degree day, and all this, or I see someone on a lawnmower, I want a lawnmower, and all of a sudden, man, I always used to drink, or a holiday with family, man, I always used to sneak down and smoke crack, whatever it is, and if you have that craving, if you can self-diagnose and recognize it and go, shit, I got a craving. Just that realization and that recognizing and that diagnosing could potentially be the difference from I've got a craving impulse, react, I've got a craving obsess and react with using or obsessing about it. If you can self-diagnose and call it out, that might be the difference between good decision, second thought, third thought, and bad decision. I don't care what any other thoughts are. I'm just obsessing about using. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, so in a way, you're asking yourself, identify, am I in the state of craving? Or call somebody, something like that, to kind of self identify what are the signs? Am I in that mode?
If I can identify it, I might be able to change it.
Mm,
Often, as you as a coach and me as a therapist, we help people identify what they're actually thinking and feeling. If you can identify it, you might be able to do something different with it or about it. But if we
mm,
can't identify it, it can be really hard to know what to do differently. So it breaks us out of that impulsive, compulsive, reactionary, full body, full mind experience of craving to shit, it happened again. I got a craving. That little like slow down or like speed bump or stop can be all the difference between obsession and, oh, that gives me enough space for a second or third thought.
mm,
From craving to react to craving to second or third thought. That's kind of what we're talking about. So
mm,
recognize it. I often see people in my groups or my clients that either want to minimize or stop their use. They almost cuss at it. It like becomes this thing that isn't necessarily their mind or their obsession. It's like, you asshole, you're craving again. Talking to the ism or the obsession. Often behaviorally, you would see people put like a rubber band or like a bracelet on their hand, like with cigarettes. And then if
mm,
they're craving, what they do, they snapped it. They identified it, and then they would reduce it by like, oh, I would feel a snap, a little pinch, as opposed to feed the thought with more negative thoughts. So recognizing it can be a huge difference.
Yeah,
Right?
and that can be a practice of mindfulness too. Like when I'm, because there's a big difference between being the thought and being with the thought. So like when
Yeah,
I'm the craving, I am the craving, and there's nothing outside of it. I won't even recognize that I'm in that mode. But when I'm with the thought, able to observe it,
yeah.
you kind of are able to separate it from the thought and then see that, okay, I recognize what's going on.
Hey, listeners, we've got something extraordinary to share, a chance to reshape your journey no matter where you are. You're familiar with Zaw Maw's insights on our podcast, but there's more. Through the Recovery Collective, he offers life, mindfulness, recovery coaching, and meditation groups guiding you toward a fulfilled and mindful existence, no matter your location. Zaw's journey from a Burmese Buddhist novice to a skilled practitioner equips him with timeless wisdom and contemporary strategies. Whether you're navigating life's shifts, seeking clarity, or pursuing self-awareness, Zaw's coaching serves as a compass guiding you toward success. The best part? Zaw's approach centers on your growth and empowerment. He equips you with tools to tap into your inner strengths for continuous evolution no matter where you are. Ready to take that next step in your personal growth journey? Connect with Zaw Maw and the Recovery Collective at 240-813-8135 from anywhere in the world. Investigating in your journey reaps immeasurable rewards. Let Zaw Maw guide you toward resilience, clarity, and empowerment no matter where life finds you. Now, let's transition back into our conversation. Stay tuned, stay curious, and keep your journey growing. And what comes with a craving often, especially those intense cravings, not those fleeting thoughts that may happen in my sobriety today. It's intense, it's physical, it's emotional cues, it's salivating, it's heart palpitations, we hear people saying that they can taste it. It's the sweating, it's racing thoughts, it's everything that is associated that we can be aware and mindful of. I'm recognizing I'm in it. I am in full blown craving, diagnosing it. Okay, kind of like stop, drop, and roll. That whole crap of just say no. Well, I'm not telling you to just say no. I'm telling you to identify it. And if you can identify it, then you might have a second, third, fourth thought that you can do something with. We say it so much. We are powerless over that first thought. We are powerless over that first feeling, that first emotion. I say in some ways, we are powerless over cravings. Now, one thing I really enjoy is the anatomy of a craving or the anatomy of a relapse. So, yes, do cravings come out of the blue? Sure, but I think a bunch of other things that we do or put ourselves in that can better set up a craving or set up a relapse. So we'd like to reduce those, which we'll talk about really soon.
Mm.
But my
I do want to ask
goodness,
you a question
go for it.
because what you're saying is related to meditation in a way too, because mind has its own mechanism and then it has its own programming. So there's always cause and effect. But then for the mind of an addiction, it's even more intense. There's like a wiring that's already going on. So like with meditation, we're able to catch the thought before it gets too late.
Yeah.
Sometimes when my mind is not trained, I find myself being angry. I don't even know how I got here. But then through
Yes.
practice of meditation, you're like, oh, that was a thought that I was having about the future or the past. And then it creates that mechanism. So I wanted to ask you about maybe it's a little bit of backtracking. Like, is there a difference between trigger and the craving? Like, is it possible to catch the trigger before it turns into craving? Is it something that precedes craving in terms of triggers?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not to overwhelm people, it's kind of like chicken or the egg. A lot of times something triggers it, but some people can't fathom that because they're so tunnel vision and they don't do that. So whether, like to your point, doing mindfulness and awareness strategies, I probably had 10% is probably being generous, but 5% of people when I was in a residential setting journal. When
Mm.
you have a craving, hey, you're walking around this building, keep that thing with you, or you're 5 minutes from it, go get it and write down what happened during and 5 minutes before. And when the people that do that, they identify some common patterns, whether it's the physical place, whether it's their emotions that are triggering the craving, or a social situation that is triggering the cravings. But we're often not that aware of our day-to-day present things. So yeah, I'd say more times than not, majority, that yeah, there are things that absolutely trigger a craving for sure. So part of what we'd like to do, and we can do that through Buddhism. And before we get to reducing these things, can you tell us a little bit more, Zal, about what does Buddhism say about recognizing cravings? And I kind of made a little pun, silly joke about it in the intro, but tell us about cravings in Buddhism.
So that's the second noble truth after dukkha is the first noble truth, and then the second noble truth is the mudya, which has to do with the repetitive craving, which is the driving force behind the suffering. But the term that is used is tanha, which is kind of like some kind of an attachment or almost like a unquenchable thirst. Yeah, so that's a Buddhist understanding of craving, which is some form of attachment or expectation. There's a wanting.
We can break that down as like a trigger. Well, for substances or even food, why do we often crave sweets, or they often say sugar is like an addiction, right? Why do we crave a mind-altering substance like alcohol, or a mind-altering substance like other drugs? Well, they're trying to quench something often.
Mm.
What do you mean by that, with your Buddhist perspective?
So the mind and the body in its natural state craves pleasure and hates pain, you know. So craving is pretty much, so the mechanism driving the craving is that, you know, avoiding pain and then wanting pleasure. Like it's either or. So that to me is like the driving force, not just like with addiction, but just like life in general, that I want to avoid pain and I'm going to crave towards no pain, you know. And if there is pleasure, I want to crave to that pleasure because it's going to make me feel good, you know. So it's like almost like a binary way of, programming of the mind and the body.
You see that as human need to either avoid pain or to gain pleasure, and the trick is to do that in a healthy way.
I don't know. I mean, in the true Buddhist sense, it's transcending that, uprooting that, not to, it's not either or, but it's
Okay.
transcending. But
Yeah.
living life in general, I think we're always in that mode. Like,
Yeah.
it's nothing personal. It's not my fault to want something pleasurable and to avoid pain. It's just how I'm structured.
Yeah, and I think with my behavioral and therapist lens that it can be instinctful to do one of those things, or an addiction can do both in some ways. It can numb me out, or it can avoid unwanted pain while inversely giving me a form of pleasure. And we say with progression of addiction that, okay, I know I might not be gaining the pleasure that I want, but at least I'm avoiding the discomfort or the pain that I am now.
Mm.
And then it rewires the brain, things like that. Interesting. Okay. Well, let's talk about the second R. So we recognize it, self diagnose, realize it. That can be the difference between feeding the energy of craving and obsession to allowing that second or third thought come in. So, what are those second and third thoughts that would be beneficial? Well, how do I root son of a bitch? I've got a craving. What do I do now? Well, we want to reduce it. So, we want to induce the intensity or the frequency, or just stopping where it's going. That's
Mm.
ideal, right?
Mm.
12 steps say an obsession of the mind, elegy of the body, that we would like to lose this obsession. That's important. Celebrate a smart recovery talks about making right decisions to not condition ourselves to fuel this and to minimize, and cognitively and behaviorally to not go into that craving. So let's talk about it. It typically lasts a finite amount of time. It's not forever, right? Often cravings typically can last, on average, 10 to 15 minutes. And this is not just true for drugs and alcohol, but I think about myself. I crave a sweet after every lunch or dinner, and it's usually the most intense for me right after I eat that meal. And if I have the, I'll say, willpower to not feed that sugar sweet craving after this 10, 15 minutes, all of a sudden it drops off a cliff and I don't have that strong as a desire. Usually. Now, here's the thing with substance use cravings. Um, they can last 10 or 15 minutes. Now, there's probably a percentage of our listeners that's going, bullshit, Luke, not my experience. And here's what I've noticed. The best and worst thing happens to people who just wait out that substance craving. Nothing happens. But what often happens? It'll come back a little bit more intense, a little bit longer, and then it'll go away. And then the best and worst thing happens. Best thing is you didn't use, but the worst thing is it'll creep up and a little more intense and a little bit longer. And if people hold on to that craving by themselves, it gets stronger and longer, and people go, and people feel powerless, and people feel like they can't break this. And then the choice decision, and it doesn't seem like a choice. It's no, I have to use at a really physiological level. It's saying I need this to survive. Is really what the brain's convincing itself of the pleasure center. Let's talk about some ways to reduce it. I think we should hit the meditation thing right off the bat. What do you think?
Yeah, that sounds good.
How so? How some people can't fathom meditating, let alone sitting still when they have a craving. So, do you have a rebuttal for that?
Before moving on to that, I think there were a lot of insights that you were sharing earlier, and I want to kind of unpack more about
Please.
that because this is not the exact analogy, but what you were saying kind of reminds me of my experience of Buddhist fasting in my Buddhist monkhood days. So, like not eating past noon, the craving comes. Like I need to eat because I'm used to eating 3 meals a day. So, like stopping eating, there's that craving. But then, like you were saying, when I recognize that, wait, why am I craving? Because I haven't eaten. But then, am I gonna die? It's almost like a self-diagnosis. If I don't eat tonight, if I just wait until in the morning, which is what I'm supposed to do, am I gonna survive? And then when I see that truth, uh, I drink water and it gets better, and I kind of reduce the interactions or like the smell or in the dining room, things like that, or people eating. When I remove myself from that, it reduces. So it makes me think about that too. So in a way to relate that with meditation, it's like meditating, not like concentration and like distracting, but it's more like leaning more into it. That I want to understand why I'm experiencing this, and then sitting with it, and then letting your mind talk to you. Um, it's would be a That's what I usually do in that fasting mode. It becomes like an opportunity for me to observe the mind and meditate. And the other point probably is also, I don't know how to talk about it in a very specific structured way, but people in long-term sobriety knows that when we are craving, it's not just like waiting it out, because if I keep waiting it out, it's going to come back. But in that mode, it's a symptom, right? There's something that needs to be addressed, and I have that window, and that needs to be addressed through a healthy mean. Otherwise, it's like a heart surgery with an open wound, and I'm not doing anything about it. So there has to be a treatment of some kind with that window. Otherwise, the craving is going to kick in, and I'm going to go back to the original behavior.
So, you as a recovery coach and someone early in recovery, that what are some things you're telling them that, as you gave the example of that mindfulness, being with that craving, how do you help them through that when maybe in the past, as soon as they thought about it, it was just go and it was no think? How do you help them through that stage, which is so foreign, right? For a lot of people, whether they're leaving treatment or just they've conditioned to craving use, and you're setting them up to be with that craving. explain the recovery coach in you, how you help them with that.
Yeah, it's difficult, but it's definitely a collective effort, right? Because it's not like a pre-packaged activities that can be done, but there's an aspect of self-discovery too. So that craving, that discomfort is an expression of a need that is not being met and that needs to be addressed. So for me, like, I have a long history of finding my own needs, like through creative outlet, playing guitar or going out for a run. Like there is a physical, emotional, or spiritual need that needs to be addressed. So kind of like sitting with it, because essentially to simplify everything, like in that moment, I just want to be happy and I would do everything to be happy. And one of the things that I do know that makes me happy is drinking or using. So that's why I go back to it. So finding other channels that's going to make me feel satisfied, content, and happy is like how we navigate. So are you going to go out for a walk, or are you going to call somebody that you care about, or show up to work? Like some kind of a meaningful way of dealing with it would be the long-term sustainable way of dealing with it.
Yeah, if someone has the ability to be in that mindfulness, cognitive, present stage with that craving, well, if they're with it for 10, 15 minutes and not reacting, then they're also mindful, present, and cognitive with the dissipation of that craving. And if they're not, they call you, or they have their other support or their other coping skills to help them through it, right? Because it's not just the holy shit, I got a craving that they're mindful through. It's through the full range of experiencing that gosh, it's different from white knuckling. It's from
Mm.
good, I got this, shove it down. It's not that I hear you sharing. It's the mindfulness practice of that noble truth and everything that comes with it.
Yeah.
Dukkha. Yeah.
And it's also very self-esteem boosting in a way. I think people have experienced that you don't do it and then you're just like so empowered by the fact that I
Yeah.
did it and I feel really good. And then that builds up over time,
Yeah.
right?
If you can't self-diagnose and go, "Oh, I'm having this right now," that's a good like measurement or parameter. If you can self-diagnose, if you can have that second thought, third thought come in emotion, then this mindfulness exercise might be more doable. If you can self-diagnose, if you can pause, if you're not always reactionary in that level of early stage powerlessness. Powerlessness evolves and changes, but it becomes a different level of powerlessness that we can sit with and relate to. So I think that's a good example for cravings. If it's just no, I can't fathom, I just go, then maybe mindfulness is not the best early stage. But
Mm.
yeah, I'll add to it, and there's different forms of meditation for cravings. One is breathing in courage and higher power, exhaling fear, exhaling addiction, exhaling that craving out through your mind's eye, and exhaling it where there's no thought through the exhale. There's different techniques that we can really benefit to be present and not hold on to that craving, which is powerful too. The deep breathing exercises. Another one is physical exercise. If someone's in the full blown craving, do 20, 30 jumping jacks, 20, 30 push-ups, sit-ups. If you're getting your heart rate up, your blood pumping, you're releasing some good dopamine and neurotransmitters, right? And
Mm.
just I've had people that were coming off of methadone and Suboxone, and not only the withdrawal but cravings. I told them to run around the house, do 30 jumping jacks, scream at the top of your lungs, get that heart rate up, and then release those good neurotransmitters. You're releasing something, and it's not the desire to or the quote unquote need to use, but you're reducing by increasing your body and your heart rate and things like that. So that can be very beneficial. Any form of physical exercise. Right? You've got some history with running. What
Mm.
about running? That's its own beast for a lot of people. It can be
Yeah.
cathartic. What do you think about running?
That was very helpful for me, although it was not sustainable because I was just doing it by myself. But I still did run a lot in recovery too after joining recovery community. But it does help because that grounding experience is also what I'm looking for in that mode of craving, because that craving mode is like there's no sense of safety, support, grounding experience, but anything that is repetitive gives me the structure and the comfort. So like some simple meditation, like you were talking about, the visualization of breathing in courage, breathing out fear or craving, but also like any kind of repetition. I know in 12-step communities, like serenity prayer is used a lot. Some people just repeat that over and over again, either out loud or in their mind. There's something very comforting about the repetition. And that's the same effect with the running too. Running is so repetitive, but also very grounding. And that's my experience. It really helps. Also, it's very physically involving. So it, you know, releases some of the tension too. But it's also important not to overdo it, because I've overdone it and it did have adverse or opposite effects
Yep.
when I overdid it.
A lot of things, quote unquote, addictively, right?
Mm-hmm.
We talked about triggers, so I'll bring this one up. There's an acronym called HALT.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired. And I think if you have just one of those things, but especially two, three of those things active at one time, it can be the conditions for cravings. So if that triggers a craving, well, let's reduce these things. So yes, it can be hungry. Those is it Snickers commercials? Someone's hangry and moaning and groaning, and they say, "You haven't eaten in a while? Grab a Snickers." And as soon as they eat, they're no longer hangry. So I'm not just saying it's hungry, but it's also nutritionally what you put in your body can greatly affect your mood and your levels. So sugar, for example, ironically, Snickers is not the healthiest food, but what does it do? It can create a spike in blood sugar. And just like when you eat high sugar foods, you get a boost and an increase. And then what happens? You eventually get a crash. Well, when you use substances, you get a boost and increase. And then what happens? You get a crash. So that is very, we call it like cross sensitization, that if you have excessive sugar, it can lead to sensitivity to substance uses because you're releasing that dopamine, and lots of sugar might have heightened cravings because of that. And when you eat certain foods, often unhealthy, it stimulates the reward system in the brain, increasing dopamine levels, just like drugs do. So this can create a similar cycle of craving and reward. When I was worked at a treatment facility, we did a morning meeting at 8 a.m. and everyone already ate their breakfasts and stuff, and they come into the room and we're talking about the recovery goal for the day and seeing how they feel physically, mentally, and spiritually, and the recovery related goal when we set intention and foundation. And one day early on, I'm looking around the room of 20 plus people, and half of them are eating lollipops at 7 and 8 a.m. And I'm going, what are we doing as a facility? We are allowing these people to start their day with a dopamine hit that they're craving, obviously. Right? A lot of these people had to use in the morning to get a boost. And now that substance is gone. So now do we allow them to have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cups of coffee and have lollipops and sugar? Well, no, we didn't set up the conditions for that. But that is kind of that cross sensitization. So what we put in our body can certainly have a big effect. Those hormonal effects, it can just, the rapid fluctuations in blood sugar levels. So it's a huge piece. So that's the hungry or nutrition. Let's go to uh, T, tired. Man, when we're tired, what happens?
I don't make good decisions when I'm tired.
My ability to function is not there. Literally,
Mm.
my prefrontal cortex is impaired when I'm tired. It makes it harder to resist cravings. It increases the likelihood of being impulsive. It it increases my likelihood to deal with emotions like anger. So for a lot of people using substances, they passed out and came to. So it's really one of the reasons why relapse is often high for people and cravings are high is because sleep is shit when they're in detox and withdrawal. Sleep is shit, and you're not getting that 7 to 9 hours, really 8-ish hours of that 4 to 6 cycles of rapid eye movement, slow wave cycle. And it's just heightened stress, emotional instability, stress hormones are going wild, emotional regulation is not there, and I just don't want to feel this. So a shit ton of coffee and a lot of sweets might help. Or all of a sudden we have cravings and we initially don't know.
Yeah, it
Thoughts on
really
that?
is a it's really is a full circle as you're describing because just stopping is not the answer. If that's the case, it's like a well-rounded approach, right? Because I need a healthier lifestyle. Because if I just don't use and drink and then still living a pretty
Yeah.
poor lifestyle, I don't have a good shot at it because things are still out of order.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I got a little calloused being in the field for 15 years plus of people that were withdrawing. We can certainly give you some comfort meds. You're still going to be uncomfortable, but we can give you some comfort meds and help your vitals as much as we can. Man, the people that I really felt for, even if we gave them sleeping medications, they didn't sleep a wink for not just days, weeks. Like you go out of your mind when you can't sleep, right?
Mhm.
Your mood swings, the irritability, like you're miserable. Like you want to self-medicate. You can't regulate your emotions. You feel like you're losing your mind. I had a soft spot for that for them. If you can get through this, your body and brain will eventually shut down. That your body will crash and get sleep eventually. But it often takes days, maybe even longer for people for that sleep hygiene and for the brain to go, I do need that REM now. You're not cutting this off and telling me just to pass out and come to. So the people that like got through those 2 weeks and they finally got 6 hours on day 16 or 17, and they got some coping skills and they tried to, not sleep during the day and try to do sleep hygiene, go to sleep every night. And a lot of them didn't go to sleep till 5:55, and then the alarm clock woke up at 6. And it was like, it's sleep hygiene. It's tough, but it's so important. There's some good, gosh, it'd be cool to get a sleep hygiene person on. That could be a whole episode in itself. But halts, right? Hungry, angry, emotional, discomfort, lonely, that isolation. So do not isolate yourself. You can reduce cravings that way. And tired, that's a tough one, but we need help with that.
Yeah. This is probably too much of a simplification, but I like simple things. But as you're describing, as I'm listening, the thought that comes to mind is the recovery process is pretty much simply transitioning from a self-abuse lifestyle to self-care lifestyle,
Yeah.
because when we're actively using, that's a form of harming myself. And just by stopping doesn't do it. I have to replace that with self-care.
Self care and let others care with us and for us.
Mm,
And that takes us to, I think, probably one of the most important reducing. And we talked about it. When you have a craving, talk about it. Don't deal with it on your own by yourself. Because, like we said at the beginning, the best and worst thing can happen. You can sit with that craving for 5, 10 minutes and nothing happens. But you can tell yourself, I got through it, that I didn't need to reduce this craving. I could just swallow it and hold on, and I don't need anyone for that. That is literally the opposite of step one, isn't it?
mm,
If you're saying, okay, it comes back up stronger and longer, and if I don't share it, when you share it, it loses some of its power somehow. That it's not you and this craving alone. Somehow just sharing it helps reduce it, becomes less powerful. But
yeah,
if you do it by yourself, you are managing and you're telling that craving in yourself and that brain wiring system that I'm not powerless over this and I can manage this myself. It is literally the opposite of step one. And I've got someone in my mind that I'm working with right now that it took them, it seemed like weeks and weeks and weeks to finally, I'll say, courage to talk to other people about their cravings. And then this person talked to their sponsor, and she said, good, I'm glad you told me. So if it happens again, call me. So as soon as this person left and was in the car, guess what they got? a craving. Guess what they struggled to do? Well, I don't want to bother her. I just talked with her. So I don't think I can, I should be able to do this myself. She struggled with the craving. Eventually she goes, what am I doing? That's what I was trying to convince myself not to do. And then she's done a whole lot. It's been easier for her. And she used the word easier, saying it lost its power. I didn't have to do it by myself. She wasn't filled with shame and guilt. So it's let others help us. I think that's a big reduction.
Yeah, definitely. That's a big part of the process of recovery. Self-care is allowing others to help us, help me.
Yeah. We got a couple more. This is endless, but I'll give a couple more. Spending time in nature. The benefit of green spaces, water, mountains. Nature just has this, and energetic as well, just calming effect that can lower our cortisol, which is our stress levels. It can reduce that. Nature encourages mindfulness and being present. It can help us recognize and be more in touch with ourselves. And that is a powerful thing, don't you think?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a sense of interconnectedness when I'm in nature. I mean, in the 12 step, some people treat higher power that way, nature. There's
Yep.
a sense of connection that, oh, I'm part of this bigger tapestry of life and I'm being taken care of by this same force that's making the plant grow.
We're all connected.
Mm-hmm.
Tap into the powerful part of that. Interconnectedness is a very powerful, potentially higher power thing.
In Theravada or mindfulness, traditional Buddhist mindfulness practice too, the first foundation is a foundation mindfulness of the body. There are some sections that are about the four elements meditation. So that can be a really fitting meditation too when you're in nature, when you start becoming mindful of these elements in the body that you can see in nature too, the solidity, earthiness, and then the water. So there's that connection between my physical body and then the nature. And it can be very soothing and grounding and healing too.
It's beautiful, beautiful. Other ways to reduce, I call it a tech detox, reduce screen time and social media and electronics. It's amazing how the most short attention ADD person can be on a screen for hours. Because what does it do? It's often a blue screen. Blue screen or sets up the conditions for paying attention and makes our eyes be more attentive to that. And to pay attention to a screen, we need to use our energy to do so, and that's a dopamine release. So there's a reason why people can scroll and jump from social media to social media. People can watch 5 to 30 second clips for hours on hours because it's dopamine hit, dopamine hit, and it's just constant. And that can just drain us. And all of a sudden, no matter how tired you are, somehow, yeah, it's 2 or 3 in the morning or it's midnight. Um, so get off the screens, and that can help you physically and emotionally and allow your brain to be more present and do the things that meditation and mindfulness is, I think, is like the best medicine for our brain and our consciousness
Yeah.
detox. Any jump out to you for ways to reduce?
Yeah, so like to kind of piggyback on that too, a good way that I do is to replace tech with physical books by slowing things down. It really helps when I physically read a book. It's just like a completely different feeling than reading it on the computer or on a social media or on the internet. So physically flipping the page, taking my time, or writing in the journal, there's that sense of groundedness too in that. And then the other things too, I don't know if this is more personal and related to my own story, but sometimes to calm my mind in my earlier days, there are just so many songs that I've memorized to sing and write and play. So I just like write those songs down physically, very, very slowly out of my own memory to just like calm the mind, write down the lyrics, like infusing with the meanings of those lyrics and then slowing it down. It always helps to slow down the thought process.
1,000 more. There's 1,000 more. Let's hop to the third R. Third R, relocate. If you're in the place where you have a craving and it won't go away. And you've tried some reduction techniques, calling someone chip, NA chip, or NA key tag, or an AA chip, or whatever it might be, and it doesn't reduce the craving, get out of there. Remove yourself. Right? There's a saying: if you hang out in a barbershop, you'll eventually get your hair cut. If you're hanging out with old using buddies or people that are gambling or playing poker night and they're all drinking and you're not, or if you're at a family wedding and it's that time of night where everyone's hitting that spot and they're all past buzzing and you're seeing, and it's almost like this weird wavelength movie and they're all in the exact same spot and like it's almost slow motion for you and you don't like it, you can go. If it's a holiday, it's the holiday season and it's holidays and you're with your family, please don't go and they're all wasted or drunk. They don't have to understand. We need to protect our recovery and our sobriety. So even though they don't understand, I really encourage people to have the courage to prioritize your recovery and your comfort over their expectations. And that can
Mm.
be really challenging for people to do. But my sobriety isn't worth their discomfort. So I think that's a huge one. What do you think?
Yeah, that's good. I'm thinking of something, not entirely what you're saying, but in the spirit of relocation, it makes me think about maybe this requires some like mind training and concentration, but it also applies to the thoughts and the mind, because a big part of Buddhist mindfulness practice is to be mindful of, is this thoughts helping me, or is this a wholesome thought, or is it a unwholesome thought? So relocation also means that, am I going to hang out with this thought? Is it helping me? Is it going to reduce the craving? If not, let me relocate. Think about something else. Like within the mind, I can relocate to a different thought.
So I got one for some of these listeners to say that's great and all, but I leave work. I have to go in the street and I have to pass that liquor store. Or I'm in sales and people are drinking around me and I can't necessarily relocate. So what would you say to the person that has to drive past that liquor store to get their house? They can't technically relocate, but what would you recommend?
I don't know if that person is already in the recovery community, that probably is the way to go in terms of, like you were saying earlier, talking to somebody who has experienced something similar, not feeling alone, not feeling isolated in that moment can go a long way. If not, the help of a higher power of some kind can, those are the main options.
I couldn't agree more. We we didn't get to this abuse of substances passively. So we don't get sober passively.
Mm.
We can't just wish our way, and I'll say pray our way to change. You have to be active or proactive. And you might have to go to that networking event where there's booze, where you have to pass that street or go by that liquor store. Well, that's a good time to be proactive. Whether someone's in a 12-step program or not, we need to find people that understand us and can help us. So to your point, man, if somehow my car just turns into that that park liquor store parking lot, well, maybe I better tell someone that understands, and then I go, hey, family member, husband, wife, friend that doesn't drink, that is in a recovery program, or other forms of support groups. Do you mind if I call you when I leave work so I can be on the phone 5 minutes beforehand, during, and 5 minutes afterwards? That's proactive. That's active recovery. And that's what we've got to do. And it might be this someone that's like, I can't leave my job financially. I'm stuck, but I'm around this drink and I don't know how to drink, how to not drink, or go in the bathroom with that one guy and use cocaine. Okay. Well, for me, I'm going to have a cup in my hand, whether it's a red cup, whether it's a bottle of water, whether it's clear. Say, hey, do you want anything to drink? No, I'm good. Got a cup. It's my pacifier. You talk to someone, hey, I'm getting ready to do this networking event or business meeting or sales, whatever it might be. Thanks for talking to me. And I'll call you in 20 minutes when I'm quote unquote using the bathroom. That's an active, proactive approach to, okay, you can't relocate at the time, but you can relocate that drink in your hand with a cup or a bottle of water or an apple juice or a cranberry juice. Okay, I can't, uh, I can't not miss. I have to go to this meeting, but you know what? I've got some family stuff, my kids. I do have to leave a little bit early today, and you know, those are things that we do. I am willing to protect my recovery and sobriety and sacrifice potentially some of their discomfort for me saying no and not going to the bathroom. I don't need to pee. Come on, man, let's do a bump. I'm getting ready to close this deal. Whatever it
Mm.
is, it's being proactive. And if all else fails, I'm willing to get fired to protect my recovery. No job. I'm not good at my job if I'm allergic and I break out into handcuffs, right? So, and that's something that I help people with. Well, my family may never talk to me again. Is it worth not dying over your addiction? Well, I'll try to reduce the blow, but I'll certainly relocate myself because I'm prioritizing my recovery more than someone else. Guilt, shame, passive aggressiveness, unhealthy behaviors, because we have to relocate our addictive, impulsive mentality with a recovery mentality. You agree?
Yeah, yeah, it's uncomfortable. It's a practice. I gotta put myself out there, but definitely a really good investment because I don't know if this is true for all the addicts, but a big part of being an alcoholic and an addict also means for me practicing self-deception too much. Like don't really know what I really want, but then when I put myself out there, connect, there are moments where I don't want to be like this anymore. I don't want to drink. I have those moments, but when I actually communicate it, talk to other people, I start finding myself through those moments. But by myself, I lie to myself all the time. I don't want to drink anymore. But then I change my mind and drink again. That spiraling down of self-deception. So connecting with communities and then calling myself out when I really want to stop and then staying true to the desire really builds up and sets up for better days to stay sober.
Give you two more examples of the recognize, reduce, relocate. One was a client, and he was in my IOP, and he had to go back up to Baltimore to for a family thing, and he was either on the train, the bus, or the metro, and all of a sudden he was on Fifth Street, and he realized he used three streets from here, and then it stopped on Sixth Street. All of a sudden, his heart rate went up. 2 streets away, 7th Street, he starts sweating, and he can taste the drugs and the heroin and where he used to cop. 8th Street, all of a sudden he stopped where he would use, clenched on, put his hand in his pocket. He had his NA key tag. He just held on, and guess what he did? He just started praying. Don't let me get off this. Help me, give me the courage not to leave.
Mm.
9th Street, all of a sudden he exhaled. 10th Street, he let go of his fingers. 12th Street, he texted his sponsor. 13th Street, so he recognized he did what he could in the moment to reduce, and then he relocated. And the last one I had, my boss worked in an inpatient facility when I was a treatment assistant, and it was after lunch, and I knocked on his door, and I opened it, and he had, I say this endearingly, crazy eyes, meaning almost like tunnel vision, but like fear and shock at the same time. And I looked at him, and we're both in recovery. I probably had 6 years, he had like 12 years, something like that. And I go, you okay, dude? And he says, no, I'm not. He got a call from an old using buddy. He's the director of a rehab, right? A
Mm.
drug and alcohol substance use rehab. It triggered his old cravings. Luckily, he worked with his best friend who was overseeing the adolescent unit, talked to him for 15 minutes. Work wasn't important at this time. And guess what? Still wasn't going away. Still had intense cravings. Still wanted to use. He called his sponsor. The sponsor talked to him for a little bit longer. Then I went and checked on him. I'm like, hey, man, how can I help? And he said, I need to leave for a while. And I said, yeah, it's probably a good idea. Now, did I think he was going to go use? No, I didn't. I think he did enough. He recognized it. self-diagnosed. He's doing things to reduce it, multiple things, not impulsively trying to reduce, but intentionally with purpose trying to reduce these things. And he still had a craving. A very safe place, a drug alcohol rehab facility for adolescents and adults, but it was still there. So guess what he did? He went out for a while. He was gone for 20 minutes. I don't know if he walked, I don't know if he got in his car. I know he didn't use, but he relocated. And he came back and he said, "You good?" He says, "Yeah, I'm a lot better." That's what we need to do. We had a plan. Whether there's recovery related literature, prayer is a huge thing for a lot of people, whether it's to a God, to a higher power, to something that can give us the courage and the strength and the wisdom and the recovery to do the next right thing. That's a big thing for a lot of people. My last story is there was this lady who told her sponsee not to visit her. She suggested not to visit her family in Texas during the holiday because the sponsor knew it was going to set herself up for cravings and triggers. So she decided to go. She called her sponsor and she said, "Jan, I, I think I'm going to use." And her sponsor said, "Honey, I don't know if there's anything I can do, but what I'd recommend is you say a prayer." And she said, "Okay." She got off the phone. Hours went by. She didn't know if she used or not. The next day, I called her and said, "Hey, I'm in Texas and I'm still sober. And I listened to what you said." I instantly went to the bathroom. She went to the bathroom. She closed the bathroom stall door. She got on her knees right in the bathroom stall and she prayed to her higher power. And that for her was the difference between using and not using. We do what we need to do. We take actions that we need to take. And I think one of the common denominators, themes of this is we don't do it alone. What do you think?
Yeah, good stuff. Those are good stories. Yeah, I mean the thing is, our body always remembers, both in addiction and in recovery. That's why cravings are there, because I've trained my body, or I've trained myself in a particular way that my body remembers, and it's hard to break out of it. I think about, I've been sober for almost 10 years now, and my body remembers recovery.
Hmm.
So like there's a meeting downtown Annapolis that I always go to, and I remember the feeling that I get after that meeting. So I just do it over and over again. Or meditation, I know the effect produced by it by the end. So just like doing that over and over again, it's like almost like the retraining of the body and the consciousness. So I guess we cannot emphasize that enough when it comes to recovery, because it's repetition. So I gotta replace the program of addiction with the program of recovery. There's no such thing as no program. There's always one program. It's either the addiction or recovery.
It's a great black and white to look at it. Am I going closer to a drink or drug or farther away? Am I doing the action of recovery? Do the action of addictive tendencies? That's a good way to do it. Thank you all for joining us today in today's journey into recognizing, reducing, and potentially getting rid of those cravings. We delved into the science behind cravings and explored practical strategies to manage them. Remember, the path to recovery and well-being is unique for everyone, and finding that what works for you is key. Hopefully we showed you a lot of things can work. We hope you found today's discussion valuable. If you did, let us know. Send us a message, and you can do so right in the episode notes on our website. We make it super easy for you to contact us. We can even share it on our next episode if you give us some feedback. That'd be a lot of fun. So please share this episode with anyone who might benefit, and there are plenty of people that can benefit. It's always cool to hear some of the therapists or counselors who play this or other episodes for their groups. Really warming to hear. So your support helps us continue bringing really this meaningful content. Don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter. We're excited to launch that. Please click the link and subscribe for more tips, insights, and updates. Our newsletter is packed with resources on mental health, addiction recovery, mindfulness, and holistic wellness. Remember, it's designed to support you on your journey to healing and growth. So thank you for being part of our community. Keep your journey growing. Until next time, my name is Luke.
This is Zaw. Thank you all for listening.